Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I always have exceptional guests on today. Today is no exception. I was so happy and honored to read this wonderful book. If you know a foster parent, if you are a foster parent, if you are interested in being a foster parent, you're going to want to read this book. You're going to want to listen to this show. With me today is Kathleen Pado, who is a licensed foster parent, promotes foster child advocacy in her home and within the community. She is a member of the National Foster Parent Association, the Catholic Writers Guild, and is a registered nurse through the state of Ohio. During much of their 35-year marriage, Kathleen and Ron, along with their 4 biological children, have opened their home to foster children who have no one to care for them and nowhere else to go. Kathleen Pado is a writer and author of this phenomenal book, Fostering Love, A Glimpse into Foster Care, by Kathleen Pado, RN, forward by Ron Pado, who is Kathleen's husband. I want to welcome you, Kathleen, to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy. I sure appreciate you having me today.
Oh, you are welcome, and I am so glad that I read your book, and I'm going to, and I love the cover on the book, too, the heart with the hand holding the heart with the children on there, and sign of the cross and the sun and butterfly. It's just a nice cover. I like book covers.
Thank you. And everything on that front cover has some meaning. The 4 children holding hands are my 4 biological children, and the 2 little children standing in front represent the little girls and little boys that come through my home. And the heart is just the love, and the cross is our foundation. And so everything that went into it for a purpose.
That is cool. I for some reason, I don't know, I might be the only host that comments on book covers, but I find some book covers very fascinating to me. Like just the book cover itself speaks volumes of what the book is going to be about. That perks somebody's interest. You're welcome. And I'm going to ask you what I ask all the authors that come on is what inspired you to write your book?
I'll tell you, when I was a child, I went to see the play Little Orphan Annie. My parents took me to Cleveland for that. And I walked out of that play and I said to my dad, that old Miss Hannigan was so mean to those little girls. When I grow up, I'm going to run an orphanage and I'm going to be nice to the little girls. Well, fast forward all these years later, I went to nursing school, got married, and then I really found out there really were not orphanages around per se. So I talked to my new husband at the time and said, what do you think about trying foster care? And so that's what we did. 18 months into our marriage, got our license, and here we are 36 years later. So we have taken children into our home most of that time. We took some time off in the middle there to raise our own 4 biological children. But most of our marriage, we've been involved in the foster care system as a second vocation. My husband's in business, and I'm a nurse, and this is what we do as our second vocation.
That's incredible. And I have to say, Kathleen, if they're reading your book, and I'll tell the audience, you opened my eyes to what foster parents go through. You know, sometimes in the news we hear horror stories and
Correct.
About, foster parents. And here you are one of the, I want to say exceptional, but I'm sure there's many, many like you, but they just haven't written books. But you and your husband, your family, to dedicate your life to helping these foster children, some who have horrific home abuse experiences, just is a testament to the kind of person and people that you and your family are. Caring, compassionate.
Thank you so very much for that. And I will tell you, not only do foster parents have bad reputations, but foster children have bad reputations.
Yes.
And as we know in every vocation, there are some rotten eggs along the way, but most people are in their vocations for the right reason and to help others. And so most foster parents are kind and loving, generous people who work hard to make life better for foster children. And I'm also going to say that most foster children are not nearly as scary as people think they are. Even teens. We've taken many teens into our home, and I would say 95% of the teens that have come through our home, we still keep in contact with years later. And they are just children who were scared, got put in the system for circumstances that were not of their own fault. And they just need people to encourage them along the way in life. And I think a really big thing for us in our family is to just look at foster care as a stage of personal journey. We think you should acknowledge the things you've gone through, but also help them grow through that and recover from the pain and see that life can still be good. We try to help them find some momentum in life. And I think that's a really big job of foster parents.
I was very impressed how you really took to heart the children that came in. Like, I had no idea that foster parents can be, involved in an IEP, that they took their foster kids to the doctors, that you were responsible for maintaining their, healthy well-being, their education. And so this book informed me. Go ahead.
We wear many hats as foster parents. We wear many hats, and one would be, getting their medical conditions in order. So many children are medically neglected when they come into foster care, and so that hat is one of a nurse or a doctor. And then we wear this investigator hat where we have to kind of see where the children's needs are. Some children have very high school needs, so then we have to act as, the parent and get them set up on an IEP, see if they qualify for that, which is an individual education plan, which is very important for foster children because it follows them through the system. Even when they leave my home and they maybe go home or go to a kinship placement, that IEP follows them from school to school. So that's a very important aspect. And then we're also transporting them to and from visits with their family members. So in a way, we're a case manager. It's just that there's a case manager at the county level who is running the show with, say, the supervisors and the judges, the magistrates. Those people are making all of the legal decisions. And then I'm kind of the case manager in my home, making sure that the child's needs are all being met, and then also, having some fun days along the way. And again, looking for that momentum with that child and getting them kind of off on a better path. Foster care is often comments that it's kind of a soft place to land and a firm place to take off from. So we try to comfort them and love them through their traumas and why they came into care, strengthen them, and then give them a strong foundation to take off from so that they have a better life going forward when they leave our home.
I'm sure it's very rewarding to see a child grow and blossom in your environment. And then, of course, on the other hand, the ones who don't blossom, that, had to be moved to a different place because of their needs, I would imagine might be discouraging every now and then.
I would think so. Overall, I feel like it is very rewarding because you see children settle down with their behaviors and you see their school grades go up in most cases. And it is positive to see the change. But I will say when children leave my home, I feel usually pretty good if I've been a good positive bridge for that child. I have bridged that time period from when they were taken out of a home that had problems until they get to where they're going. So maybe they're getting to go back home. Maybe they're going to a relative. Maybe they're being adopted. But I see my job as being a bridge to get them there. And I'm only sad when I don't like where they're going. And sometimes that's out of my control, and you have to learn to be, as a foster parent, able to take excellent care of the children in the time you have them, plant as many seeds of change as you can, and then you have to let them go. And that is a very hard part, but it's not as hard if you're happy with the progress the child's made. And that's one of the reasons we work so closely with the biological families. We want their families to heal and be stronger so that they can take the children home and so that we can feel good that we did a good job and that the child's safe when they left our home.
Oh, are you still there, Kathleen?
I am.
Oh, okay. I cut off there a little bit. You had cut off. Can you hear me?
Yep, I'm still here. Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I missed your last part.
So I feel sad
about the
only
families.
when I was saying I only feel sad when I'm not happy with where the children are going when they leave my home. So sometimes when they leave, they are going back to their family, and if things are better with their family, then I'm okay with that. But if the trauma at home has not improved, then that's when I feel most sad when a child leaves my home.
Yes, I could imagine so, that they're going back to the same harmful environment that they just, came out of.
Well, and part of that case plan, when a child comes into foster care, the family is given a case plan, and they have things they have to get taken care of before the child can go back home. So they have to maybe get stable housing or get employment or pass drug screens or go to therapy or counseling. And so the hope is that when the child is returned home, their home situation is more stable.
And I never knew that until I read your book. I never knew that.
Many people say that. After they read my book, they say, foster care is not at all what I thought it was. And so I try very hard in the book to make all of the points I need to make, and I follow every point with a story so that it's an interesting read. And all of the stories are true.
I was amazed. I'm a Jersey girl, Kathleen, so I'm thinking when I'm reading this book, what a woman, what a great husband you have. I mean, I can't even picture being newly married and being a foster parent, then having 4 kids of your own, and then dealing with the challenges that some of these foster children have and some of the heartbreaking stories of abuse that they endured. Can you tell the audience, in case someone is interested, I know you have to take classes. How does one become a foster parent?
Well, you become a foster parent by contacting your county that you live in. It would be Job and Family Services or Children's Services or Children's Services Bureau. It has different names for different counties, and express that you have an interest in becoming a foster parent. And so you take a certain amount of classes, and then you fill out a home study packet, and then people come through your home and inspect your home. And there are quite a few steps, but it's a very rewarding process to go through. It takes maybe 6 or 8 or 10 months in order to get an active license, and then you would be a level 1 county foster home. But I will also say there are many private agencies out there that have similar requirements, but maybe not exactly the same. And private agencies sometimes will take in different children, maybe medically handicapped children or maybe large sibling groups, and that's kind of considered a higher level of foster care. So the best thing to do is call your county to get started with information on it. And you did mention Ron. I do have to say, at the beginning of our marriage, when I would call him and ask him about children, and give him, ask him, what do you think about this child or that child? And now he just comes home and he'll say, oh, who's at the dinner table tonight? Are these ours or are we babies? So through the years, that has kind of evolved. And I will tell you one other thing that I think is very important is the effect that fostering has on the biological children in the house. And what I mean by that is the children that are Ron's and my biological children. There's a lot of clever parenting that has to go on to keep both your biological children happy and your foster children happy. And one thing that I think works well for our family is that when our children were young, we did a lot of teenagers. And as our children went through the teen years, we dropped down and did foster children that were younger. So really they weren't competing against each other so much. And now that our children are grown and out of the home, we take large sibling groups typically, and we have a group of 4 right now.
Well, that's a good idea.
It works for us.
Yeah. Not to be in the same, age group for the competition because, let's face it, siblings compete with each other. Then you add to the, foster children. I think it's a great way to show your children, your biological children, how to be caring and compassionate. I'm sure they learned many valuable life lessons.
I definitely think so. Our biological children, I write about this in my book, and I say this is not to brag, but some of the things that your children will learn is they learn to think outside themselves, and they learn that not everybody is as privileged as we are, and that we are called to do positive deeds for other people. And what better way to do that than invite children into your home that need structure and love and parenting, and be a good sibling too. So it teaches them, plus all the skills like, CPR and first aid, and my kids can suction a child and they can do a feeding through a feeding tube. So my kids have learned all of that along the way, and of course they're young adults now. But I will say that having a good, healthy respect for your biological children in the home is extremely important and has to be your primary goal, because over 50% of foster parents quit within their first year of service or after their first foster child placement. And oftentimes they cite the reason is that their biological children were not adjusting well, and it was too much stress on their family. And so I write quite a bit about that in my book because I've never found any other information out there on that topic. And it's very important in the long-term success of being a foster parent for many, many years is that you're not neglecting your own nuclear family along the way. You can't lose your own identity just because you're bringing foster children into your home. You have to add them in and make them part of your family in that way.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. You can't, lose your own kids while helping someone else's. That's right. That wouldn't be right to your own children. I was amazed in reading your book about the different levels of foster care. As you mentioned, level 1, and then there's specialized. I never knew that. And then, where they can go to another home, in the hopes of being adopted by somebody or a family who wants to adopt them.
That's right. So children typically either go home to their family, or maybe they go on to a kinship placement, which might be an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor who knew them from their neighborhood. And then, of course, some children, the case plan fails completely and they are adopted outright.
And I also like the fact that you brought out in your book that sometimes the foster care agency may not be supportive, and that also adds to foster parents quitting. How do you find the right agency that will support you in what you're doing? Well,
I will tell you that there are so many employees at agency that every once in a while you'll come across an employee that you have a hard time working with or a case manager. But the vast majority of them do a very good job at what they're doing with the resources they have. And the best advice I can give to that is to use email and send information to your case manager so that they aren't missing things. They have so many cases and so many children that if it's written down for them, that keeps things in order. And I have really found that every agency has positives. And so we have worked for a couple during the years, one because we took in medically fragile children for a while, so you have to go through a different agency for that. But we found the support to be adequate. I will say the biggest support, though, along the way is going to be finding foster friends, because the agency can only do so much with the resources they have. So the friendships are what helps. So if somebody, I give an example of this in my book. My girlfriend had 6 little ones under the age of 6, and they were all in one family. And she called saying that, somebody poured milk down one of the vents in the kitchen. And she's like, I know it's only spilt milk, but she said, I just can't do it today. So she packed up all of her children. She brought them to my house. I had 4 at the time, and we spent the day just playing together. I did absolutely nothing else because she needed a break right then, right there for that period of time over spilt milk, literally. But you know what? I've had those days too. And so what we do is we really support each other. And there's also lots of things out in the community that community members can do also.
I would imagine it takes a village. It takes support. That's a tough job of being a foster parent. And I would imagine you need support. It's almost, I could equate it to caregiving, and how caregivers need support.
I agree.
And, I just kind of compare the two in my head. And you are actually caregiving, Kathleen, especially these children are medically fragile. You are doing very much caregiving. And I love how you did your life books with each child. Mm-hmm. Could you tell the audience what that is? This is, I have to say this, Kathleen, I hope I don't embarrass you. You, to me, my opinion, you took your vocation, foster parenting, and you took it to the next level. You did these books for these children, and these children, a lot of them still contact you after, so many years. That's really, I know it might sound redundant, just a testament to you and your family. Of how wonderful
thank you, Betsy. That's
you are.
Such a kind compliment. I appreciate that. I will tell you on your first comment about the alternative caregivers, these are people who are a little bit more than a babysitter, kind of, there's somebody who would maybe have a background check and go through just reading the discipline policy and signing that they agree with it. Then they can help us out and be kind of a babysitter for us for an afternoon or an evening. I have one lady who will come any Tuesday afternoon. She owns a farm, and she's got lots of land, and she'll pick up any of my children, and she'll take them to her land and run around on the farm. They all have muck boots there, and they get dirty. She feeds them dinner. She bathes them. She puts them in their pajamas, and she'll bring them home for me. And so she doesn't really want to be a foster parent herself, but she's happy to help once a week or once every other week. And these are the type of people who help the long-term foster parents stay in it. So you're exactly right that we do need a lot of support. And then I'll mention the life books. The life books started because I had baby books for my 4 biological children, and I thought, gosh, I feel so guilty keeping records for my children and not keeping records for my foster children. So I can happily say over the 170 foster children I have had through my lifetime, every single one of them has gotten a life book. And what that is just a binder I take with the paperwork on the first day they come in, and I put in important school papers. I put in some coloring pictures, or for teenagers, I put in, things that would be significant to them. And then in between the pages, I fill in with pictures. and little quotes or sayings or something funny they did or a place we visited, and it's all in chronological order. So when they leave my house, they at least know what doctor they went to, what school they attended, what activities we did while they were in our home, and people they met along the way. And I do have adult foster children who say those life books are still sitting on their bedstand. So obviously it's very important. And so the way we bond with our foster children kind of evolves from that. I feel like our emotional bonding with those children, even if they leave our house, they never leave our hearts. They're just kind of ours in our heart forever. But we share them, obviously, with their family, and we're actually in contact with many of the biological families. I have day-to-day contact with some of the families, and that's a real blessing in this vocation.
Yes, I read that in your book, and that is, I could not help but, reading this book, folks, and, I'm not just saying this to say it, but really, in reading this book, you learn about what it takes to be a foster parent, to be a good foster parent, and to excel at it. And that's what you did, Kathleen. You do have a calling. And I was thinking of, when I was reading your book, and then I'm thinking about when you hear the horror stories, like how do these parents get away with it that do abuse their children in a foster home if they are being monitored? Was a question that popped up in my mind, since they seem to, regularly check up on you and your, family, the foster children that you have in your care. So I'm curious, I'm going to ask you that. How does some families just slip through the cracks that the foster parents that are abusive, that shouldn't be foster parents?
Unfortunately, I think that comes from the fact that the caseloads for the social workers are very, very heavy. So unfortunately, most counties and most workers that I know have twice as many children as they really should have. And that's where it comes in nationally, where this information that I'm trying to get out there, because first of all, our governments need to understand how difficult the work is, and we need a lot of support. It's not always monetary support. The fact that we could keep foster parents in the system longer and not constantly having to recruit new ones, but how do you do that? Well, you do that by retaining your old ones. And foster parents just turn over so quickly, and the reason is because they just are not, there's not given incentive to stay. And that's the reason that the case plans are just so large. It's very, very difficult work. And I think that's how some of it gets through the cracks. So because you have to have at least a social worker in your home every 30 days, seeing you and your children and the home and the bed they're sleeping in, a minimum. And then there's other people who are through the house, their guardian ad litem or their CASA who represents them in court. Sometimes their attorney will come to the house to see how they're managing in the home. So there are lots of people checking up on them. And modern day foster care, we should not be having children slip through the cracks. But then you also have the aspect of the community. And there are a lot of things that people in the community can do to help. And maybe you don't want to be a foster parent, but we need to talk about these things. And my husband Ron and I go and talk to churches and community groups and business people all the time about foster care. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of community helping. I talked to you about the alternative caregivers. That's a big deal. I had a couple of ladies came to me from my church, and they said, well, we want to do something for you. And so they shop garage sales. And then whenever they find nice tennis shoes, they wash them up, and then I'll come home, and there'll just be 4 new pairs of tennis shoes sitting on my front porch. And that's such a big help. Or people donate clothing to me, and if I can't use it, I know 100 other families, and we just all divide up everything we get. So donations are a really big thing. I often tell companies, for Foster Parent Appreciation Month, one year we got like poker chips at our table, and we were like playing cards and poker chips, and we're like, is this a joke? We just didn't really understand. And they're like, well, it was a donation. I'm thinking, okay, I wish people could understand that we need paper towels and we need disinfectant wipes and we need diapers and we need batteries. And if companies knew that, I'm sure they would be willing to help us out. Even peanut butter and jelly. But, we don't need poker chips. That's not helpful. So there are many things out in the community. And the reason that's so important is because then that strengthens the foster family. Whatever support you're giving to us, that strengthens us, and that just helps us make better decisions and keep foster children longer, not feeling so hopeless ourselves and helpless, and then being able to carry on and maybe take another placement after that child goes home instead of saying, it's really, really hard work and I think I'm just going to quit. That just doesn't help the situation.
That's right. And I'm sure you face burnout just like, parents do or people do at their jobs. I would imagine that happens with foster parents facing, burnout, especially if they've had a challenging cases. They might think, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But I guess you could take a break. You can take a break and then go back to it.
Yes, that's true. And many families do that. Maybe when a placement goes home, if it's only a placement for a few months, maybe you're okay to take another set of children. I was at the agency dropping off one set of children one day to go home, and they tracked me down in the lobby and said, can you take these other two children? So I just loaded a new set of children and went home. So sometimes we don't take a break, but sometimes we'll take a few months off. We just had a daughter get married, and so we took a few months off during that period of time, and then we got called with this sibling group that we're taking now. But I will say burnout is a big deal for foster parents as well as staff members at the agencies. And so whatever we can do to build each other up along the way is so helpful. I mean, just sending a kind text or laughing with each other when you see each other. There's just so many little things we can do to build each other up along the way. Keep our communication with each other open, write things down for them on emails, and that helps decrease the burnout, as well as having these wonderful community helpers or alternative caregivers who give us a rest. That helps with our longevity in the vocation.
Yes, I can imagine that you need a respite, just like other caregivers, because you are caregiving. It is a form of caregiving, foster care. And, I could just imagine the expense, feeding, more children, especially in today's day and age of how expensive food is. And, clothing. I'm sure donations are very, very helpful. Toys, if people could donate toys, food, whatever they can. And I think that's important and I'm glad that you do that, Kathleen, that you go out in the community and talk about what foster parenting is and also how people can support foster parent to stay in foster parenting.
Yes.
By,
Thank you for bringing that
contributions.
Up. Right. Thanks for bringing that up, Betsy. We talk about layering children with love. So every layer of love we place on a child, whether it's, now their medical condition is now taken care of, or now they're being fed and they're no longer malnourished, or they have a comfortable bed where they were sleeping on a hotel floor before. So we do those things for foster children, but the community can then layer foster families with layers of love. And I feel like it's very easy to find a foster family in your community, especially if you go through churches or faith or one person knows another and you just network. And anything you could do to then maybe wrap some layers of love around that family, that will help them also. And if they have really difficult children in their home, and there are children that are very difficult. This is not easy work every day. Some days are better than others, obviously, but we have very difficult days, and we need people to wrap layers of love around us and keep us going so that we don't have to ask for children to be removed from our home or have them move on to another placement, because sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's unavoidable. When you get a child into your care, we always say beware of the iceberg. You only know the tip when they come in. And in fact, the night I got the 4 siblings I have right now, the information system was down. It was being rebooted or revamped or something. And so they said, we really don't have a lot of information to give you. And you just kind of take the children in on faith, and you have to figure it out along the way. So other people being willing to help you is such a big help. I will tell you during COVID, we had a teen girl and boy living in our home, sister and brother, and then the agency called in the middle of the night with a sibling group of 6 that they didn't want to separate. And we said, well, we already have 2, and they said, well, but could you figure it out? Could you do it? Well, we did. Well, about a month later, COVID hit, and everybody came home from school. So I'm running 8 Chromebooks with these children in my home, ranging from ages of 8 to 14. I felt like we were having our own school lessons right at that time. And so you can imagine how much we need layers of love when we're going through something like that. And my neighbor called, and she said to me, what could we do to help you? And I said, you know what? The YMCA is still open, and the kids would love to go swimming. Could you buy them bathing suits? So, a week later, a package arrives, and there's 8 bathing suits and 8 sets of flip-flops and 8 cover-ups. And I thought that was so incredibly kind of her, and several of her family members went in, and they purchased this for our children. And it ended up being just a saving grace for us during that time, that we had a great activity for the children still to do, and they all got to wear bathing suits that weren't passed down. They were all their own. They'd gotten to pick the colors. That was such a big deal and a big help. So that's the way the community can help, especially, even if you don't want to be a foster parent. There's still a lot of ways to help.
That was very generous. That's really a nice. I'm sure during COVID it had to be very challenging.
Very.
With the restrictions, and also, I want to tell the audience, from you reading your book, and I didn't know this either till I read your book, you could get a call during the night. We have children for you.
Oh, yes. Most of the calls come during the night. I very rarely get a daytime call.
You're planning on going out, and you get a call. We have children for you, and, for your biological children to understand, we might have to forego this activity because now, we're having children coming in, and not to have that, resentment build. And I'm sure that's a little, fine line of, of challenge for that, because as siblings, there's jealousy. Mommy likes you better. Yep. Mommy does this for you, not for me. So then you had foster children, and I had to tell you, Kathleen, my hat goes off to you. I salute you and your husband and all foster parents for doing a job that you do, and I can't thank you enough, really, for what you have done. You said you had 170 children. Think of that, folks, 170 children in 35 years. Right.
And I often like to tell people that there's about 450,000 foster children out there in the United States alone. Plus, with what's going on at the border, there's probably a good 100,000 that are lost or displaced down there. And so, if we think we've got it bad up in the Northeast, the states like Arizona and Texas, things like that, they really have a very high need, and they have a high need for their communities to support them, because we're all being asked to take as many children as possible if we're licensed. And sometimes we can do that, but it makes it easier if other people can support us along the way.
Absolutely. Well, Kathleen, I want to thank you for coming on today. And it was an honor, really, to read your book and chatting with you. Folks, you have got to get this book, Fostering Love, A Glimpse into Foster Care, by Kathleen Pato, RN. Where can people buy the book, Kathleen?
Well, thank you, Betsy. They can buy it on my website, KathleenPato.com, or they can buy it on Amazon. It's available online through Target and Walmart, those sorts of places also. And everybody who does and can pass my word along, you're helping change the world one child at a time, and I really appreciate all of the help from all of you.
You're welcome. And where can people contact you?
They can contact me through my website at KathleenPato.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Kathleen Pato, LLC.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathleen, for and you and your husband and your family for the work that you have done over the years. You are a woman of strength, grit, determination. I admire you, you and your family for what you do. You are really an advocate for foster children, and I think people, when they read your book, they will truly get the picture of what you do, what other foster parents do, and how they can get involved, even if they don't want to be a foster parent, but to support a foster parent with the layers of love that you talked about, something that I didn't even dawn on me till I read your book. And I think this is a phenomenal book, and I highly recommend for people to buy it, to read it. You certainly will not be disappointed. It is an eye-opener. And
thank you very much, Betsy. Thank you very much for helping us get the message out.
Sure, you are welcome. It is my pleasure and honor to help people, to provide people with resources. And if you want to become a foster parent, contact Kathleen. I'm sure she can help you. Contact your agencies in your local area. They go by different names in different areas. And I just want to thank the listeners for listening. And if you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, I suggest you do so, because I have phenomenal guests, great information, wonderful resources. I'm on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, YouTube, to name a few. And please read the blog. We'll have information in there on how you can contact Kathleen Pato, RN, and Jeanne White, the station manager. She writes the blog and produces the show. So thank you, Jeanne, and thank you to Lillian Cauldwell, who's CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And as I always say at the end of my show, excuse me, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright. Because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder and brighter world. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy, Betsy, Wurzel, Wurzel. If you are a caregiver and you're looking for a support group, I have hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement that I created. So no one should ever walk this journey alone. And that's what I have to say today, folks. Thank you again for being with me, spending time with me. Until we chat again, be safe, be kind, keep shining. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye now.